Fairness sounds good. That's why it works. It's the word people use when they want you calm, predictable, easy to manage. Think about it. The moment you're told, just be fair, what happens? You hesitate. You wait your turn. You stop pushing. Not because it's right, but because you've been trained to believe fairness protects you. Here's the uncomfortable truth. In every room where power actually moves, fairness is optional, selective, applied only when it benefits the one enforcing it. The people at the top don't break rules loudly. They redefine what's fair after they've already won. And the most dangerous part? You defend the system that limits you. You call it morality. They call it strategy. Machiavelli noticed this centuries ago. Most people still miss it. If you've ever wondered why playing fair keeps you stuck, this is the reason they never explain.
Humans don't crave fairness. They crave predictability. Fairness is just the story we tell ourselves, so the world feels stable, so chaos feels controlled, so we can sleep at night believing effort equals reward. But the brain doesn't actually measure fairness. It measures relative position. Who's above me? Who's below me? Who decides? From childhood, you're conditioned to accept rules as neutral, lines, turns, permissions. You're told this creates order. What it really creates is compliance. Because once rules feel moral, questioning them feels wrong. Once fairness feels virtuous, advantage feels selfish. And that's the trap. Most people assume power rewards good behavior. It doesn't. Power rewards alignment. Alignment with the system, alignment with expectations, alignment with whoever defines the rules in that moment. That's why two people can do the same thing and only one gets punished. Same action, different position. Your mind wants to believe that outcomes are clean, deserved, earned. So when something unfair happens, you don't attack the structure, you attack yourself. I should have waited. I should have been nicer. I should have played by the rules. That self-blame is not accidental. It keeps you docile. Psychologically, fairness works like a leash. It's invisible. You don't feel it until you pull too hard. Look at any hierarchy. Workplaces, friend groups, politics, families. Rules exist, yes, but enforcement is selective. People with leverage are called strategic. People without it are called unfair. Same behavior, different label. The brain hates ambiguity, so it clings to fairness as a coping mechanism, a way to explain why others win while you wait. But Machiavelli understood something most people still avoid. Stability is not maintained by fairness, it's maintained by control. And control depends on belief. As long as you believe fairness protects you, you won't notice when it's used against you. You'll keep playing a game where the rules shift right after you commit to following them.
You were taught a simple formula. Play fair, work hard, wait your turn. And eventually, things balance out. But look around. Do they? Here's the belief nobody questions, that fairness creates equal outcomes. It doesn't. It creates order. Order for the people already on top. Because fairness isn't about equality, it's about timing. Those with power bend rules before anyone notices. Then, once the advantage is secured, they freeze the system and call it fair. Ever notice how rules get strict right after someone wins? That's not coincidence. That's containment. Think about negotiations. The person who insists on fairness first is usually the one with less leverage. They want symmetry because asymmetry scares them. The powerful don't ask, is this fair? They ask, can this work? Big difference. Fairness becomes a weapon when it's moralized. Once a rule is labeled right, breaking it feels dangerous, even when the rule was designed to limit you. So people hesitate, they over-explain, they seek permission. Meanwhile, others move quietly, decisively, without asking. And here's the flip most people miss. Unfairness isn't the opposite of morality. Naivety is. Machiavelli never argued for chaos. He exposed a pattern. Systems don't reward virtue. They reward results. Morality is applied after the fact to justify whoever won. That's why history remembers conquerors as leaders and losers as villains. Same actions, different outcomes, different stories. Ask yourself this. If fairness truly protected people, why do those who follow it most strictly so often end up waiting? Waiting to be chosen, waiting to be promoted, waiting to be noticed. Because fairness trains patience, not power. And patience without leverage is just obedience with better branding. Once you see this, you start noticing a pattern. Fairness is enforced downward, rarely upward. That's not an accident. That's how control stays invisible. And once control is invisible, resistance feels wrong before it even feels necessary. Before we go further, notice something. If this feels uncomfortable, that's a signal, not a warning, a confirmation. Most people click away right here, because once you see how fairness actually works, you can't unsee it. You start noticing moments where you held back, while others didn't, and won. If this perspective feels sharp, it means you're paying attention to things most people ignore. Keep going. The next part is where this stops being theory and starts showing up in real life.
Watch how power actually moves in the real world. Not how it's explained, how it's practiced. The dominant person rarely announces themselves. They don't argue about fairness. They act, then let the environment adjust. In meetings, notice who interrupts and who gets interrupted. The interruption itself isn't the power move. What happens after is. Does the room correct them, or does the conversation continue as if nothing happened? That's dominance. People with leverage break micro-rules constantly. They arrive late, they skip steps, they change plans midstream. And no one calls it unfair. They call it confidence, leadership, authority. Same behavior from someone lower in the hierarchy, it's labeled disrespectful, unprofessional, unacceptable. That's how power exposes itself. Fairness language shows up most when someone wants to stop momentum. Let's be fair here. Translation, slow down. Everyone deserves a chance. Translation, don't move ahead of the group. These phrases aren't neutral, they're breaks. Dominant players understand timing. They don't fight the rule directly, they move before the rule matters. They take space first, then negotiate terms later. Look at social circles. The person who decides plans isn't the nicest. It's the one whose absence would change the night. That's leverage. In workplaces, promotions rarely go to the most fair. They go to the most useful, the one who solves problems others can't, the one whose departure would hurt. Fairness becomes irrelevant once dependency appears. Here's the risk most people ignore. If you rely on fairness instead of leverage, you become replaceable. And replaceable people are always expected to follow the rules perfectly. Dominance doesn't mean cruelty, it means optionality. Options to say no, options to bend norms, options to act without asking. When you lack those options, fairness feels comforting. When you have them, fairness feels negotiable. That's the uncomfortable reality. Power doesn't announce itself with force, it reveals itself through permission. Who needs it and who doesn't. Power isn't loud, it's assumed. The strongest form of authority doesn't demand obedience. It creates an atmosphere where obedience feels natural. This is where fairness becomes psychological camouflage. People confuse fairness with intelligence, with maturity, with being above the mess. But psychologically, that belief does something dangerous. It disconnects you from perception. Because authority isn't granted by rules, it's granted by belief. If people expect you to act freely, they interpret your actions as justified, even when they bend norms. If they expect you to follow rules, every deviation feels suspicious. That expectation shapes reality. Machiavelli understood that power lives in perception, not intention. What matters isn't what you mean, it's what others assume you're allowed to do. This is why some people can say less and be taken more seriously. Silence, used correctly, signals certainty, and certainty overrides fairness. The mind associates confidence with competence, so when someone moves decisively, others rationalize it after the fact. They must know something, they're probably right. That's how authority self-reinforces. Fairness language, on the other hand, signals hesitation. It asks for validation, approval, consensus. Those are not neutral signals. They place you inside the system, not above it. Here's the hidden mechanism. People don't follow the fairest person. They follow the one who seems least constrained. Freedom reads as power. And once power is assumed, rules bend quietly around it. This is why leaders are forgiven for flaws that would destroy others. The behavior didn't change, the perception did. When you understand this, you stop asking, "Is this fair?" and start asking a more dangerous question. how will this be perceived and by whom? Because perception decides whether a move is called bold or punished as unfair. Most people never learn this. They stay focused on intention. Power focuses on interpretation, and interpretation is where control actually lives.
This is where most people get it wrong. Once they realize fairness is flexible, they rush toward manipulation, shortcuts, games. That's the danger. Because power doesn't punish immorality, it punishes miscalculation. The dark side isn't breaking rules, it's breaking them without cover. People don't turn on you because you acted unfairly. They turn on you when your actions disrupt their sense of order. Move too fast, take too much, ignore perception. And the same system that once rewarded you will correct you brutally. This is why naive manipulators fail. They copy surface behaviors without understanding context. They push before they're needed. They demand before they're valued. They bend rules before dependency exists. That's not power, that's exposure. There's also a quieter risk, internal corrosion. When you justify every move as strategy, you lose calibration. You stop noticing resistance. You ignore weak signals. You assume silence means agreement. It doesn't. Silence can be patience, it can be fear, or it can be preparation. Many people who fall from power never see it coming because they mistake compliance for loyalty. Fairness myths keep the obedient calm, but power myths blind the ambitious. Machiavelli warned about this too, not directly, but clearly. Control is fragile when it depends on deception alone. The moment perception flips, everything collapses at once. Reputations don't erode slowly, they snap. And here's the final risk. Once you see through fairness, you can't unsee it. You start noticing how often it's used to stop you or justify others. That awareness sharpens you, but it can also isolate you. Because playing the game doesn't mean forgetting that others are still inside it. Power isn't about abandoning rules. It's about understanding which ones are enforced and when. Miss that timing, and the same unfair system you tried to exploit will use fairness to erase you.
Here's what changes when you really understand this. You stop chasing fairness, not because you're cynical, but because you're aware. You realize the game was never designed to reward obedience. It was designed to reward awareness, timing, and leverage. Fairness is a story told to keep systems stable. Power is the force that decides when that story applies. Most people live their entire lives waiting for balance, for recognition, for justice to arrive on schedule. It rarely does. The ones who rise aren't reckless, they're precise. They know when to wait, when to move, and when silence is louder than protest. They don't ask permission from a system that only respects outcomes. Machiavelli wasn't telling people to be cruel. He was telling them to stop being blind. Once you see how rules actually work, you gain something most people never do: choice. Choice to step forward while others hesitate. Choice to hold ground without explaining. Choice to recognize when fair is just another word for stay where you are. If this perspective made you pause, that's a sign you're paying attention. And if you want to keep sharpening that awareness, not loudly, not desperately, but quietly, deliberately, you already know what to do. Because in the end, the most powerful move isn't breaking the rules, it's understanding why they were written and who they were written for.